yeah. 1, 2, 3, pasa el guaro. Y sin estrés, que caro. Te gustan los chicos malos. Y se te ve que ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Yeah. Esa Julieta no necesita su Romeo. A esas caderas todo le creo. Ya está, esta manera de perreo. Bájale al fuego porque esto se puso feo. Aquí un paisita con la de Ponce. Ella la mala y apelando el bronce. Yo flow Maluma, tu flow Beyoncé. Pega esto pa' que sientas el roce. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Ella como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Yeah. Yo le doy un flow a mi bebé la pupi. Le doy un guarito pa' que deje el tutti frutti. Pa' que no se estrese y solo me va a hacer booty. Izquierda, derecha con su movimiento sutil. Nos noquea como lo haya en el ring. Nunca pasa moda como la era de los memes. De toda la peli ella es la mejor sin. La vez de esta cara y eso que no sea Supreme. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Baby, presentando pa'
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe button if you are not subscribed, please. Just let me know that you can hear me also because my ear set isn't working in one ear. So just let me know that you can hear me. Hope you're all good. It's almost the weekend. Got some good news, some interesting news, and some fact checking to do today. We are going to do some fact checking to do. We're going to do some fact checking today. If I can get my tongue working properly. I wanted to say thank you to Tamiko Hinman for being a member for 8 months. Thank you. Very much appreciated. All right, let's get straight to it. Let's start with the good news. Shall we start with the good news? Suits. It's coming to Netflix. Coincidence or conspiracy on the same day as Charles' birthday parade. Is Netflix being shady? Is Netflix trying to be shady? Either way, I think most of us would rather watch Suits than Charles's big pomp and pageantry parade. Although I have to say, given the absolute clownery that we were given during the coronation, I'm actually quite tempted to watch the Trooping of the Colour this year. That's what the monarch's birthday parade is, the Trooping of the Colour. I mean, the coronation gave us Charles throwing a tantrum. It gave us Camilla racing so quickly into that cathedral. that her dress was lagging behind. Couldn't wait to get in there. It gave us William sulking in front of the whole world when he was meant to be swearing to his father. It gave us Harry walking in with swag. Unfortunately, Harry won't be there. It gave us so much though that I'm actually tempted to watch, just to see if we have any clownery, and of course I will report that back to you. Next thing, more pictures of Harry at the Warrior Games, and also the U.S. Army posting, thank you, Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, for all you do to help our wounded, ill, and injured service members. Hashtag Warrior Games closing, and he did give a speech. And if you come across this tweet on Twitter, please make sure that you comment because the trolls found it and they were going wild in the comment section. So let's try and drown out the trolls, please. And great to see Harry just happy and thriving and with his brothers and sisters in the army. Legs, you said, did anyone notice that Kate and Baldy were not sitting next to each other last year during trooping? It was weird. I'm guessing I'll repeat this year. I didn't notice that, but it'll be interesting to observe. And if I do watch it, thank you for pointing that out because I will be looking out for that. Thank you. Okay, next thing. Over in Australia, this was in a textbook for studies. I think it was humanitarian studies, something like that. But it was about Meghan and her endorsement of a denim company, Outland Denim, and how the sales soared after she wore it. So it says the celebrity endorsement saw the opportunity of Australian jeans company Outland Denim saw in late 2018 when Meghan visited Australia in 2018 after her wedding to Prince Harry. She wore a pair of black skinny jeans made by the manufacturer. A week and a half after the Duchess wore the Harriet jeans, Outland Denim's website traffic increased by a whopping 948%, bringing the Australian ethical clothing brand to world attention. Traditional denim manufacturing causes a large environmental impact due to the high water consumption used to grow cotton and the pesticides sprays used on the cotton crops. And then it goes into the different approach that Outland has towards making their jeans, making them more sustainable. And it's not the first time Meghan has endorsed or worn, rather, therefore endorsing a ethical brand. She wears them very often. She's very conscious of what she chooses to purchase, and often helping small businesses. We saw that with the baby outfit that Lily was wearing in the Netflix documentary. It said Petite Lily, I think it was, and that was a completely independent company. You know, a mum that just does stitching at home, and how amazing for that business to be given that kind of PR. So Meghan out here in study books in Australia, fantastic. Over in the West End, there is going to be a new Diana musical based on her life, and Denise Welsh, who has been a huge defender of Harry and Meghan, she will actually star as the Queen. So if anybody goes and watches that, please do let us know how it is, and congratulations to Denise Welsh. In absolutely balmy crazy news, there is a guy who is a Prince Harry impersonator, y'all. He is apparently earning more than 1,000 a day as a lookalike. He said, I thought I'd get less work after Brexit, but business is booming. So the irrelevant Prince Harry, those who look like him and actually have a job as a lookalike are making big money off of being the irrelevant Prince Harry. Irrelevant where? I mean, good for him, I suppose. Pretty nice money. 1,000 a day. Who's hiring him? Who is hiring him? I can see actually another article there. I never clicked on that, but it said I've been a child's impersonator for decades and I won't use the tube. Oh, uh, being as posh as the king. All right, let's go to your comments. Lorna, you said I miss coming to the chat. Glad to have you here. Hi everyone, if you're just joining. Sylvia, you said the owner of the jean company in Australia had to move to a larger location and rehired people that were laid off after Meghan wore their jeans. Incredible. Yeah, I used to work for an eye care company. We sold contact lenses and sunglasses, and there were a pair of Les Specs, I think they were, that Meghan wore. They were black Les Specs. I think that, oh yes, now I remember the pair that she wore to her baby shower when she was walking out and they papped her. And we used to sell at least 2 or 3 of those a week, which is pretty good. Um, and that was consistent. So pretty much anything Meghan touches turns to gold. I mean, the furniture during the Oprah interview sold out. Insane. Anna, they always say there are 10 people in this world who look like you. I don't think I've ever met anybody who looks like me. When I was young and I had braids, people said that I kind of looked like Brandy, but I don't think I've ever met anyone that looks like me. Even other Zambians. Okay, next thing. Right, this tragic story. There was actually an update on this last week, but I just happened to miss it. But the police escort motorcyclist could with a capital C, because it probably won't happen, could face criminal charges over the collision that unfortunately took Miss Helen's life. Here's the thing about this. First and foremost, Sophie should not have even been in the place where her motorcade was speeding in the first place, right? Secondly, I want to know why a motorcade was needed for a minor royal and why that motorcade was speeding. So, do I think that the motorcyclist should take some responsibility? Yes, but ultimately, the orders for an entire motorcade and for that motorcade to be speeding came from the top. So, if any charges are going to come forward, other people should be held responsible as well. And those other people are in the royal household who gave the orders. And I don't know that Sophie has had any contact with the family since, other than, a few statements that were put out. And even in the days after Miss Helen's life was taken, Sophie was just waltzing around, going to events, smiling. I mean, it was just like business as usual. Now, today, Sophie and William were out, and William looks so happy here. When is the last time that you saw William this happy? Because, honey, he ain't that happy with Kate. I mean, they're fixing his tie, fixing his suit, smiley, smiley, smiley. This is actually the first time, I looked this up, this is the first time Sophie and William have done an event. Why the sudden change of protocol? Something's going on here. Yeah. I'm gonna go to your comments before I continue. I do hope Miss Helen's family get the biggest payout, because the way that they have just swept this under the carpet is just unacceptable. Rhonda, she looks happier and better here than she looks with her. But yes, they both look happier here than they do with their spouses. Now, I do try to set some boundaries on this podcast, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. All I'm going to say, and I think you know what I mean by this, I hope Edward is okay. Because those of you who may have seen pictures of him lately, I hope he's okay. That's all I'm going to say. Marianne, Sophie had to pretend there is public interest to take her pictures. That's the real story. The actual fake car chase. Yeah, exactly. That was the actual fake car chase, right? Oh, light side. Has anyone from the royal family given any public condolences or apologies? There was a statement that was put out by the palace that Sophie sends her thoughts and prayers. Beyond that, you haven't really heard anything. Okay. Next thing. I think that the tabloids are trolling us at this point. Tyler put out this article that said the Princess Royal has been dubbed the King's secret weapon. Yet again, we have another secret weapon. I don't know how many secret weapons this institution is going to put out, but apparently Anne is one of them. And Omid even tweeted, Royal Beat Challenge. Just go 1 week without calling someone a secret weapon. We are tired. I actually think that they heard our criticism online of the repetitive headlines that they put out. And they're actually just trolling us now. Because they do listen to and watch what we say. Yes, apparently Anne, pictured here with Kate, wearing their finest Mary Poppins cosplay, is the new secret weapon. Sharon, Sophie is taking over some of Kate's duties. Maybe. All right. On to the next thing. So it was the anniversary of Grenfell, and the royals didn't mark it. They actually decided to do something for Windrush. A nice opportunity to be photographed with some coloured citizens, shall we say. I'm going to read something from Celeb Bitchy because I think they just summed up what I felt best. Because we've spoken many times about the way in which they use people of color as props, and the fact that they would do this and not do anything for Grenfell. I wonder actually if the reason that they didn't pay any attention to Grenfell is because they wanted to not bring any attention to the fact that Meghan is really the only one that helped in this family. Like she actually did the Together cookbook. Agnes, she said, what does Windrush have to do with Grenfell? No, I'm not saying it has anything to do with Grenfell. I just said that it's interesting that they decided to do this and they didn't really mention Grenfell at all. So I'm going to read this by Celebrity. It says, yesterday was the 6th anniversary of the Grenfell fire. Mind you, they could have marked both, by the way. The 2017 disaster, which caused the death of 72 men, women, and children, and displaced hundreds of Grenfell residents, many of whom are immigrants and people of color. The Windsors did not mark the anniversary in any way. None of them did anything. Instead, Charles and Camilla hosted a reception at Buckingham Palace to mark the 75th anniversary of HMT Windrush's arrival in the UK. So they were there and they invited Sir Trevor McDonald, June Sarpong, Jamaican-born entrepreneur Levy Roots. At the historic event this afternoon, the royal couple unveiled 10 new portraits of Windrush elders. The King commissioned the pieces of artwork in 2022. You know, all of this, but when the Windrush scandal was going on, crickets from these people. But you're doing all of this? So basically, the Windsors couldn't do anything for Grenfell on June 14th because they were too busy whitewashing Britain's treatment of the Windrush generation. It's actually all part of the same trend, in my opinion. No word on whether Suzanne Hussey was in attendance at yesterday's Windrush reception. Her resigning from her position last December, she was brought back into the fold when she attended the coronation last month. But I bet Hussey was there at the palace yesterday. But where are you from? I hope she asked nobody that question. We all remember what happened. Okay, let's go to your comments. Church Nelly, didn't they kick Windrush people out of England? Yes, exactly. And when that was happening, crickets, absolutely crickets. So they said nothing when it matters, but then they do all this window dressing for PR. And no mention of Grenfell at all. Yes, Agnes. I don't know why they keep showing up for these events. Me personally, I wouldn't. After everything that's happened with the royals, you couldn't pay me to show up to an event like this. You just couldn't. Just, like why? Yes, Sylvia, Meghan made a huge difference while she was here. Okay. Next thing. An apology, apparently. An apology from a journalist. Is the tide turning? Is this just an isolated case? I don't know. But a former magazine editor wrote an apology to Harry and Meghan, although I felt like reading it, it was more directed to Harry than Meghan. But I'm going to read it to you for those of you who haven't heard it yet. So, for 4 years, Alice O'Connell, pictured here, was editor of New Zealand's Women's Weekly. Is she proud of the way she covered stories about Prince Harry? No, she is not. So, her apology says, I am someone who apologizes often and perhaps even to a degree that is problematic. I apologize when someone else is in the wrong and for things that are entirely out of my control. On more than one occasion, I have apologized for the weather, which is why it's with some embarrassment that I acknowledge that there's someone who I've owed a genuine apology to for quite some time, that I've until now failed to say sorry to. That person is Prince Harry. So it should be that person is Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. But it's literally just one line. That person is Prince Harry. She continues, I've skirted around the idea a few times in the last few years, writing about how terrific and often misunderstood his book Spare is, and have harshly criticized other media outlets in the way they have reported on any story involving the prince. But not any stories involving Meghan. But each time I've fallen short of doing one thing I really should have written, an apology. See, for 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, I was the editor of New Zealand's Women's Weekly, having been the assistant editor for 2 years before that. Mind you, this is a women's magazine, right? And a lot of the writing would likely be about Meghan. But the majority of this apology is directed at Harry. The backbone of the weekly was stories about the royal family, and had likely been that way for the majority of the magazine's 90-year history. Nearly every week that I worked there, they were either the main cover or a large drop-in. They were that popular. Wow, that's interesting. But I didn't always get it right, particularly not when Harry and his wife Meghan were concerned. I published stories that were unfair and incredibly one-sided, and can now see were from sources who weren't telling the truth. My biggest mistake, though, was that I stopped seeing Harry as a human being. You stopped seeing Harry as a human being, not Meghan, who you put on your covers. She probably still doesn't see Meghan as a human being. Kindness is something I've prided myself on for the long time. You know what, guys? This isn't even an apology. This isn't an apology. This is a pity party for her. This isn't an apology. The weekly was always seen as the kinder magazine in its peer group. It was up against the likes of Women's Day, New Idea, and NW. And when I got the job as editor, it was something I was determined to carve out even further. I was determined there'd be no salacious and overly gossipy stories, and it would instead focus on the good, particularly when it came to everyday, hard-working Kiwis. But on reflection, it wasn't all that kind. I wasn't kind. I wasn't kind to Prince Harry, and I certainly wasn't kind to his wife, Meghan Markle. I often think that the hatred, though, that's directed at Harry, the source of that is their hatred of Meghan. Because had Harry had married the Rose that they wanted him to marry, it just wouldn't. The hate just wouldn't be there. As I watched Harry's court case, I feel nothing but shame. Oh, it took you that long. So she didn't feel. She goes on to say, I feel nothing but shame and anger. So she didn't feel shame and anger when she watched the Oprah interview, when Meghan talked about her, unaliving herself, having ideations of her unaliving herself. She didn't feel shame and anger when Meghan talked about her miscarriage. She didn't feel shame and anger when Meghan was crying in the Netflix documentary because of the threats that she'd been given to her life. She didn't feel shame and anger at any of those points, just as she was watching Prince Harry's court case. She continues, and I also felt regret. But he's right. He's completely in the right. Although, unfortunately, I fear he won't have enough evidence to win. Now, I want to make it clear that in my former job, I never had a part in anything as scandalous and low, even the same ballpark as phone hacking or underhanded measures for getting stories. But I was a cog in the machine. Yes, a very small cog all the way out on the other side of the globe in New Zealand, but nonetheless, a cog. I reprinted stories and quotes from British newspapers and magazines that, knowing what I know now, were untrue. If you were a journalist who was doing a job, you wouldn't know they weren't true back then. I commissioned stories to British writers who I trusted for their connections in the palaces that contained information that was, in hindsight, likely very untrue. And I don't blame those writers. Having read the sections in Spare, where Harry talks about the lies and spin put out by communications teams from other royal houses, we're talking about those of Charles and Camilla, plus the Prince and Princess of Wales, I can think of several stories that it makes sense about. For one, I can remember the talk about a rift occurring between the Fab Four and the hoo-ha about Meghan supposedly making Kate cry before her wedding to Harry over bridesmaid dresses. We printed that story when, yes, in fact, it was the opposite scenario that took place. Yes, we had official sources, but those sources were telling a different version of events to protect their own royals, or were deflecting and creating entirely false stories to bury other stories, negative stories, but true stories that might come out about the other royals that they were responsible for. When Harry and Meghan, the Netflix documentary, screened here last year, I had a sudden flurry of media requests due to the fact that when the couple were talking about the intensity of negative stories that appeared about Meghan, one of the images that flashed was a cover of Little Old New Zealand Women's Weekly. So this is the cover that you see here. The main image was of Meghan posing for a publicity shot for Suits, wearing a blue dress, her arms crossed and against her knees, her hair and makeup perfect, giving a glimmer of a smile. The headline screamed, Meghan's shock passed. Is Harry heading for trouble? It was a cover I signed off. I had to reread it to remember it, but it was shortly after the pair married. So she put this joke of a cover out, signed it off, don't even remember what was written in it. But I'm sure she remember how much her paycheck was for this cover. I'm sure she remembers that. Andrew Morton, the same journalist who wrote Diana, Her True Story, had just finished up a new biography on the soon-to-be Duchess titled Meghan, the Hollywood Princess. We'd got hold of an advance copy and wrote about some of the bombshells in the book, which talked about Meghan's former marriage and former friends who claimed fame had changed her for the worst. When I watched the documentary and it flashed up, I was surprised. At the time, I remember thinking, heck, there were so many worse articles that our competitors in New Zealand put out. Why this one? But I also felt ashamed. It was unnecessarily mean. So she's embarrassed because her cover that she signed off got put out. How much do you want to bet if that cover had not been in the Netflix documentary, she wouldn't be doing this pity party of a non-apology? Other media who reached out at the time were keen for my comment. It'd make a cute story, said one, but it didn't at all feel cute. It felt wrong, very wrong. See, at the time, as time went on in my role and the pressure to sell more magazines kept building, I soon found out what sold and what bombed. Stories of princes fighting sold. Stories about Meghan's past sold. Sure, I could say I was just doing my job, doing what was asked of me, and if I had have done a U-turn on that, I would have lost my job. But in reality, what would that really have been a bad thing? Just because it was what people wanted to read didn't make it the right decision to print those stories, particularly when they were accompanied by salacious headlines, the very thing I set out to stop. While I should have apologized sooner, I felt the urge recently, especially seeing one paper only apologize when forced to and watching as the rest of the media forges ahead in their narratives, refusing to reflect on their practices or past reporting. I get it in a way. For a lot of people, when they're accused of doing something wrong, even if they really firmly are in the wrong, the instinct is to be defensive. It's a knee jerk. That's not true. He's a liar. Look at all the stupid things he's done, response. It's one thing when you're reacting like that in a conversation in your own home office or wherever this heated conversation is taking place. But in Harry's case, those defensive, we haven't done anything wrong. He's just a silly complaining whinger. Retorts are coming from huge media organizations who have the ability to voice their defensive and, quite frankly, wrong thoughts to millions of people packaged up as news. Examining their own behavior and the part they have played in a very broken system for many, many decades now seems far too much of a stretch for many, or perhaps any, media organizations. I guess because doing some serious thinking and reflecting can bring up uncomfortable truth that their behavior has been unethical and wrong and cause serious distress and harm. Because this isn't just Harry's fight, it's a fight he's waging to honor his late mum, his wife, and for his children and future grandchildren. So, while I might be alone in this apology, I wanted to voice it. And like I said, perhaps the biggest apology I owe Prince Harry is for not truly treating him like a human being. Prince Harry and his wife, dear, who you keep missing out for some reason. I'll never forget the royal tours I went along on in the job. Before I was editor, I travelled as an official member of the media on Harry's first visit here in 2014 to cover the trip in the weekly. The group, the Royal Rota, that Harry now frequently and angrily refers to, contained local media who'd been granted access, as well as international media, mostly dominated by the British journalists and photographers from many of the tabloids, including The Sun and the Daily Mail. I felt a buzz about the whole thing and wrote stories about how down to earth Harry was, because he was, in every interaction he had with the general public, very engaged, interesting, and generous with his time. It was also incredibly obvious during that time that he despised the media. He didn't care whether anyone got a good photo of him or whatever we were all there to do. He was only interested in talking to the charity workers or everyday New Zealanders about what they cared about, what was important to them, and whether there was anything he could do to assist. He wasn't rude or unkind or difficult. He just often refused to acknowledge our existence. Good. Glad he did that. And although it looked like he was doing his best, his facial expressions and mannerisms often gave away his true feelings of the press. Meanwhile, the Rota were a grumpy pack, constantly barking at him to move or face them to get a shot, nearly all of which were ignored. They'd complain he wasn't pandering to them. They'd complain about the weather. None of them complained as hard as they did when when then Prince Charles and Camilla toured New Zealand in 2019. Then I heard them complaining about being the B team, forced out to the other side of the earth instead of covering whatever William and Harry were doing. The more interesting, cool, and newsworthy royals. If the royal rota, sorry, this is my own commentary. If the royal rota were that uninterested in Charles and Camilla in 2019, does anyone think they're going to be interested in them going forward? I mean, they had a whole coronation, and apparently Kate's pink dress stole the limelight from the Chelsea Flower Show. Oh, it continues. Those were the royals, talking about William, Harry, and Kate. Those were the royals who might land them a spot on the cover instead of page 4 or worse. The pack was also just a shadow of the huge media numbers for the Harry tour. When Harry talks about his father's hang-ups and his sons, and more often the case, daughters-in-law stealing the show, I believe his every word. Of course, because nobody really cares about Charles and Camilla like that. What I'd failed to see at the time was that, while I worried Harry looked sad, I hadn't stopped long enough to think about what was being asked of him. He didn't owe any of us a perfect photo opportunity. The idea that he was paraded around like a circus animal to perform and then scolded for not performing enough tricks is, well, insane. Yes, it's insane. Let alone the fact that the people he was being asked to perform in front of are people who work for the same companies that contributed to the traumatic death of his mother. And I think this also speaks to something else. Harry was there for the people to do the best that he could with his privileged position as prince, and Meghan as well, right? So Harry and Meghan actually saw their royal tours as opportunities to actually help people, and that's the way in which they were behaving. Even when they went to South Africa, they decided to do away with the red carpet welcome. They were there to do business, to help communities, to offer service. And I think this is what irritated the press, because the press is just there to get pictures, to make their money. And Harry and Meghan were not playing along. So it just shows you that a lot of these, the royal tours, and they're showing up, spending all this public purse money to do all this PR fluff, and really, who's benefiting from it? It's mostly the press, because they make money off of the pictures and stories, and the royals, because they keep this lie going that they're actually doing something. But actually, it's become very clear that the most productive members of this family were Harry and Meghan. It's one thing, sorry, it continues, her non-apology apology. It's one thing that we say about celebrities like famous actors or musicians, the media scrutiny. It's just the price that they pay for fame, or something that just comes along with the territory. I've never understood this whole thing that media scrutiny is the price that you pay for fame or becoming a famous person. I think it's just a bunch of nonsense that the media comes up with because they know salacious gossip sells. If a public figure has done something criminal, then yes, fair enough, report about it and hold them accountable. But outside of that, a lot of it is just salacious gossip, and the media print it because they know that they're going to make money. But I've never agreed with this idea that media scrutiny is the price that you pay for fame, especially if you've never done anything wrong. Like, that shouldn't come with it. People shouldn't have to pay a price for just living their dreams. You want to become a singer, you want to become an actor, just let people live. So it goes on to say, instead, he has been scrutinized since he was an embryo, paraded out in front of the media on a regular basis, and hounded by them in his downtime. Really, I think it's certainly fair enough that he has a few complaints about it. And yes, while I did do a fair few covers that celebrated Harry, like the ones when he visited New Zealand, I should have been looking at the bigger picture rather than chasing the stories of who his next girlfriend would be and how the rest of the family would react. What a waste of time. Harry deserved better. His wife deserved better. They still deserve better. And for my part, to him and Meghan, I am really sorry. Right there at the end, after all that babbling, I am really sorry. Well, do you know something? as a fan, apology not accepted. Because again, if this cover had not been shown in the Netflix documentary, would she have apologized? If something had happened to Meghan, would she have apologized? There were more than enough occasions before Harry went to court that she probably should have apologized. And in the first place, she should not have signed off a lot of those stories. Right. My voice is now crackling. Drink some water and go to your comments. Phew. Miranda Ross. Yes, too little, too late. Yeah, Lorna, they're trying to save their behinds, right? Oh, I think I already read that comment from Lex. And you know what? The apology needs to be as loud as the disrespect. Needs to be as loud as the disrespect. Light side, you got Tom Bauer taking punches at Meghan again. Listen, they're gonna wheel out Tom Bauer. They're gonna wheel out that living corpse every single time they need someone to hit back and spin a narrative, spin a fake narrative. But what does it say? That Tom Bauer, Angela Latrine, Petronella, the side chick to Bojo, this is who they have to defend their beloved royals. All the impossible. Did that lady apologize because she was told she have 2 months to live, or she made enough money on them? Oh dear. Lorna, you said she's sucking up to get an interview. Whatever the case, I think it's just too little, too late. Yeah, lady. As a woman, she should have been empowering Meghan. Yes, apology not accepted. I wonder if some of these publications, though, are running scared. Okay, let's get through your comments because I was reading for a while. Yeah, truthfully, jealousy for real. I mean, Meghan's shocked past. What is so shocking in Meghan's past? Did Meghan once make a cheese sandwich? What is so shocking? And today, for some reason, the trolls and bots of Derangerville have been out again, rehashing tweets like, Doria went to prison and, Meghan's past. But they never have any evidence for any of this. And can I also just say, the ridiculous standard that these derangers hold Meghan and her mother to. Because let's just say it was true that Meghan had a so-called past and Doria had gone to jail. So, the entire royal institution is a mess, an adulterous, lying mess. Jeffrey Epstein befriending mess. So why are we holding Meghan and her mother to this impossible standard when you are some of the most corrupt people on the planet? Oi. Okay, let's go through some of your comments. Marjorie, you said, I agree, it was not an apology. She's not apologizing to Meghan. I just believe, and we're going to say, I don't believe that woman. Meghan is still being vilified by her, as Meghan is seen as a slave being biracial. Yeah. That was the longest non-apology apology I've ever read. There was nothing sincere about it. It felt like she was trying to just explain her bad behavior away. Lottie, maybe she wanted Harry for herself. A lot of them seem to have had this delusion. Unfortunately for them, it's Meghan that's not the convict about. Lorna, they still don't understand that if Harry and Meghan are a unit. If you hurt one, the other one bleeds, and vice versa. So you can apologize to Harry, but it will be hell will freeze over before he talks to you. Yes. Yeah, she's apologizing for being a crap journalist and not doing her work to investigate if stories are true. Cynthia, maybe scales are starting to fall off her eyes and she's beginning to see more clearly, but her vision is blurred. Maybe she needs some bifocals. I think they all do. Hmm. Okay. So I'm gonna wait, who is it? Joan Garcia, is this her biography or an apology? Yeah, right. That's the most pity party apology I've ever read. Okay, sorry, but I'm gonna scroll through your comments so we can get to the bottom and get to the next story. Thank you so much, Legs. It's only slightly better than Jeremy Clarkson's apology. Not accepted and cancelled, indeed. All right, let's get to the next thing because I've got a few more things to get through, and I've been going on for quite a while because that was so long. Okay, so we all know that the judge threw out the Heritage Foundation stupid case, basically saying without an individual's consent or an overriding public interest, blah 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 blah. This was a rubbish court case, and it was never going to go anywhere. You were wasting time and bullying Harry and targeting him and his family. And one of the sticking points for their whole case was that Harry had done the ganja, the green stuff, and some other stuff. Well, the internet is forever, and somebody in the squad, shout out to the person who sent me this, dug up this. Piers Morgan, why I had to tell my kids that I did the D's. Hypocrite indeed. Also, just to do some fact checking. Let's do some fact checking. No, Netflix has not cancelled Harry's Invictus documentary. Heart of Invictus is still coming. And I'm assuming it will be out about the same time as the Invictus Games in September in Dusseldorf. Also, there was this going around about Harry and Meghan's Spotify deal potentially being cancelled. I think Tom Bauer had claimed that it had been cancelled. No reputable, and I say reputable with a small r, but no reputable outlets reported that. It was just something that Tom Bauer said, and it kind of spread to some minor outlets and to the usual Harry and Meghan hater platforms like news.com.au and GB News. But some of the outlets had a slightly different spin on it. So GB News, for example, went with Meghan Markle's 15 million podcast fails to pay off for Spotify as 200 more jobs cut. So was Meghan meant to save Spotify? So because Spotify cut 200 jobs, they did that because Meghan's podcast didn't do that well. The podcast was top 10 and often number 1 for the whole time it ran. Glad to see that they think Meghan is so powerful, though. So no, there has been no confirmation that Harry and Meghan's Spotify deal has been cut, and the fact that I think it was the second most popular podcast all year, second only to Joe Rogan, who's been around for a decade and has 60 million followers. Okay, if you are second only to someone like that, then I don't think that your deal is going to get cut. Unfortunately, we're going to see more stories like this just continue because if they have to acknowledge that Harry and Meghan are doing okay financially, that they're financially independent, naturally people are just going to start asking more and more and more, well, why is the British taxpayer paying for the other royals? And with that, I am done. I had one more story, but I'm exhausted. And it's not anything positive about Harry and Meghan, so I'm going to leave it for tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. As always, you are amazing. Thank you for showing up. I went dancing yesterday, actually. That's why I was so tired to do a podcast. I tried bachata. I'm actually liking bachata more than salsa, I think. I think I'm going to go more to the bachata side than the salsa side. But that's why I didn't do a podcast yesterday because I was exhausted. If you're following me on my travel page, you can see everything that I'm doing when I'm not out here on these royal streets. Um, but yeah, if anybody was wondering where I went yesterday, and you don't have to accept the apology since it's not written to you or about you. I'm joking, guys. Um, okay, I saw. Let's see. Oh, Legs, you said thank you again for the super chat. The British royal family aren't making money for the royal rota. They also don't want to cover the scandals of the other boring royals. Thus, they go after Netflix and Spotify. Yeah, it's just a rehash of the same nonsense, right? Like it goes around in a cycle. Harry and Meghan are broken poor. Meghan is a bully. Meghan was wearing Saudi earrings. The same story just rehashed over and over again. Like, aren't the haters even bored at this point? Yeah, Sonia, I think she's definitely covering her behind. She's also afraid of the backlashes. Yeah, she's afraid of the backlashes and losing her eyelashes. Chief Dilly, file that apology in the bin, indeed. Yeah, Matty, she wants to believe that she's a good person. I mean, if you are truly a journalist, you would have stepped back from day one and realized that there was something weird going on with the media. And I think that so many of these people just revealed themselves. They wanted to believe that Meghan was a horrible person, even though there was no tangible evidence from day one that she was. They just wanted to believe it. Because how do you believe that someone who has never had a single bad word said about her for the entire, 35 years of their life is this big bad wolf when they married into the British Royal Institution? Really? Come on now. Carolyn, I cannot understand how people believe all of the lies. They do not check things out there for themselves. Yes. And I think, as like I said, they wanted to believe that she's a bad person because they're salty as hell. Never seen a Meghan Markle hater that doesn't look like they hit the wall 10 times 10 years ago. Nurse, did she send this to Harry and Meghan? Because it sounds like she's apologized to make herself feel better. Yes, that's what this is for. This is therapy for herself. Bronzy, the gentleman who was shaking Charles's hand is named Levy. He's from Liverpool. He created the hot pepper sauce. Yes, and I use that sauce often. It saddens me to see him out here like this. Yes, he is one of Britain's most interesting entrepreneurial stories. Um, he actually got his major breakthrough on Dragon's Den, and his I think it's Rega sauce is truly an amazing success story. And definitely, yeah, I was disappointed to see that picture as well. If I'm honest, you're not gaining anything now from being attached to the royal institution. You're really not. Exactly, Joseph. Meghan's past doesn't come close to 200 years worth of skeletons in the royal family closet. That indeed. And they were so desperate to try and make her look horrible, they were out here paying people to lie. If Meghan had a so-called past, we would have known about it by now. And even if she did, it does not measure up to anything that the royal family have done. You know, Lorna, Spotify cut 200 jobs because they overinvested in some projects and the music side is losing money. Yes, nothing to do with Meghan at all. I mean, I saw another headline. It was like a BBC exec was talking about something that was completely unrelated, and then she somehow managed to insert Harry and Meghan into the conversation as well. Boy, they're obsessed. They are writing this, hoping to get a response from Spotify to know whether there will be a second season. That is a very good point, Faya. I did not even think about that, right? Put articles like that out that Harry and Meghan lost their contract, and then Spotify would have to correct it. Very good point. Monica and the Dancing Queen. None at the moment. None at the moment. But I've done one salsa class and I went to one bachata like freestyle um thing yesterday and I really enjoyed it. So it's definitely going to be on my to-do list now. Learn how to bachata. Very sexy dance. Yeah, Joseph, they may have cut 1,000 jobs if it weren't for Meghan. Like, dang, leave the woman alone already. Yes, Matty Rambo, they are reaching a whole yoga stretch. Quentin Caliga, Mama Doria was a social worker at a mental health facility with a master's degree. Exactly. And I even think I saw something from a deranger today on Twitter that looked like a forged prison report. Like, this is how desperate they're getting. They want so badly to paint Meghan's mother in a negative light, when we all know, first and foremost, that it's her father and whatever dodgy dealings he had going on with the press that are the problem, and that the royals themselves are a much bigger problem. Light side, and the sad thing is that there are big accounts running that story. Yeah. Yeah, Benjamin. Don't they get tired? They're not tired yet because it's still making the money. That's why. We need to make it unprofitable to be a Meghan hater. That's when they'll stop. Unfortunately, I don't think they'll stop before that. Angelina, tech companies have been cutting thousands of jobs. The fact that Spotify only cut 200 could very well mean that archetypes was a big boost. Yes, and they actually said in their annual report that they got a big boost because of archetypes. Oi. Give me strength. Yeah. Helen, these vipers need to focus on themselves. Yes, they need to go take a salsa and bachata class, go mountain hiking, and touch grass. Yes, you never hear anything from Mama Doria because she has too much dignity. I mean, the only time that we've heard her speak out was in the Netflix documentary. She waited until then. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Baron's probably coming on soon. My voice is almost gone. Thank you as always, everyone. Appreciate you so much. And I'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.
Lunes, ya. 1, 2, 3, pasa el guaro. Y sin estrés, que caro. Te gustan los chicos malos. Y se te ve que ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Yeah. Esa Julieta no necesita su Romeo. A esas caderas todo le creo. Y esta manera de perreo. Bájale al fuego porque esto se puso feo. Aquí un paisita con la de Ponce. Ella la mala y apelando el bronce. Yo flow Maluma, tu flow Beyoncé. Pega esto pa' que sientas el roce. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no. A perrele reggaeton, ton, reggaeton, ton. Con su flow gemelita de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no. A perrele reggaeton, ton, reggaeton, ton. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota. yeah, que se mueve como loca, yeah. Ella es como Jordan, wow, facilito las anota, yeah. Ella se le ve las notas, yeah, que se mueve como loca. Yeah, yo le doy un flow a mi bebé la pupi. Le doy un guarito pa' que deje el tutti frutti, pa' que no se estrese y solo me va a hacer booty. Izquierda, derecha con su movimiento sutil. Nos moquea como lo haya en el ring. Nunca pasa moda como la era de los memes. De toda la peli ella es la mejor sin. La ves de esta cara y eso que no usa Supreme. Con su flow, con su flow, con su flow. Gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, ton, reggaetón, ton, ton. Con su flow, con su flow, con su flow. Gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, ton, reggaetón, ton, ton. Ella es como Jordan, wow, facilito las anotas. Ella se le ve la nota, yeah, que se mueve como loca, yeah. Ella es como Jordan.